And I'd like to call this November 7th, 2022 meeting of the Concord Select Board to order. And as usual, we will start with the consent agenda.
Okay, so there's one item I'd like to hold because I have a question on it and I understand that Marcia is coming in later. The last item, the transit bond bill support letter. I do support it, but I have questions about the letter. So I'm going to move to approve the consent agenda for all items listed except that last one, the transit bond bill support letter.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, that moves us to the town manager's report.
Thank you and good evening. There is a copy of the report in your packet. There's information on the first page about the activity of our public safety departments, both police and fire. A note that I found particularly interesting from Chief Judge, who I know he's mentioned this before, it's with respect to lithium ion batteries, and he mentioned that they have been working on a new protocol and standard operating procedures in the event of a fire that involves lithium ion batteries because it requires a special response. So I thought that that was interesting because we're seeing more and more of those in town.
You're talking about car batteries,
Car,
not hearing aid batteries.
not,
Well,
well,
also in homes now, they have these lithium ion batteries to change the store electricity for off times of the day. We don't have this so much in Concord because we don't have time of day rates,
Yeah.
but there are more coming.
yeah, but not hearing aid batteries.
Yeah.
Hopefully that doesn't pose a particular public safety hazard. A lot of information in here about public works, and I will note that there's another announcement of wastewater capacity. This is not new news. It has been included in the weekly report before, but just to remind everybody that we did hear on our NIPD's permit that we were not granted the additional wastewater treatment capacity that we had hoped for and felt that we could process within our existing facility. That means we are looking for ways to be able to provide additional wastewater capacity to the community. One of the ways that we are hoping to pursue is a partnership with MCI Concord. They do have a fairly decent sized wastewater treatment facility there that is being underutilized to the point that we believe they're having some operational issues as a result because the census is low at MCI Concord, thankfully, but that means the flow is down as well. So that we are pursuing that and then just trying to understand how we can maybe get the attention of the state and EPA because we need additional wastewater treatment capacity.
And did they indicate why they're not going to approve it?
I'm sure they did. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head exactly what the reasoning was. We were looking to increase our permitted capacity, which we believe we can do with the plant. So it's not like they it would have been in addition to the permitted capacity we've had there for a very long time, but I'm happy to follow up on that further. Also want to mention that we're continuing with our street paving. Recently worked on Autumn Lane and Old Mill Road. Both of those roads were reclaimed and repaved. Stacy Circle, Pheasant Lane, and Monument Street at Sawbrook Mill were milled and repaved. Continuing fog sealing treatment on Monument Street that started a couple of weeks ago. There's some information about some stormwater and drainage repairs. We finally completed the work at Sawbrook Mill on Monument Street. We did the last of the repaving last week, and some notes on a couple of different blockages that we are working to correct. There's a lot of good information in the packet about activities going on at the library. I will note that we had a meet and greet for our new Makerspace coordinator, Christine Urbano. Christine oversees the workshop Makerspace at the main library and will be heading up all kinds of innovation and technology initiatives at both library locations. Let's see, our Visitor Center Director, Beth Williams, has applied for a couple of grants. One will provide funds to translate current tourism materials into several languages to improve access for speakers of foreign language. So
Town events or are sanctioned by the town for run by nonprofit organizations. That's as far as I know so far.
Wow.
I don't know the time frame. I don't know what purchases, enabling purchases might be allowed, but we'll figure it all out. But it's certainly welcome and kind of a surprise. So the second thing I just want to call attention, it's in the packet, is the proclamation for Louisa May Alcott Day. And just to note that every 10 years, the Concord Players does a production of Little Women, and that they're going to be kicking that off at the end of November. So it's a nice event, just something to note. And then thirdly, I just wanted to clarify one aspect of our correspondence policy, the citizen correspondence policy that we recently approved. The policy is purposely vague about certain details, but to give the chair some discretion. But now I'm just going to lay out at least what my personal policy is on this, which is on the part about repeated letters from an individual. So the guideline that I'll use is that any individual, we will publish letters on the same issue up to 2 letters in a 90-day period, and on any issue 3 letters in a 90-day period. I realize that also some projects are very long running, so you could be dealing with a different phase, let's say, of the middle school project or the Estabrook Woods litigation or all kinds of long running issues. Those would be considered separate in a 90-day period. So just to clarify this, because certainly we have been getting some repeated letters or not repeated letters, but a number of letters from the same individuals. So it's just to inform the public of that policy. Okay, then let's move to our first general agenda item for the evening, which is the application for a liquor license amendment and the change of officers for Colwyn Management, doing business as the Residence Inn by Marriott at 320 Baker Ave. Do we have someone representing the applicant?
We do, Mr. Chairman. If you can hear me, I am joining you remotely. My name is John Aida of McDermott, Quilty & Miller. We're located at 28 State Street in Boston. I'm
Okay.
here on behalf of Colwyn Management, Inc., which, as you stated, does business as the Residence Inn. This is a change of officers. Anytime there's any change to the corporate makeup, we are required to get approval from the board as well as the ABCC. And just to clarify, the only new appointment is the position of a chief financial officer, and that's David Rebich. There is no other changes to the corporation. And for your purposes, there's no operational changes and no ownership changes.
So when you mentioned the one change, your connection broke up. So
Oh, I'm so sorry. So we're simply appointing a chief financial officer. That position did not exist prior.
Okay.
So that is the lone change.
wow. Okay. Liquor license amendment for a chief financial officer change. They're not usually on the front line of duty.
They're not. So anytime there's a change at the Secretary of State's, which is what happened here, we want to make sure that all the paperwork reflects that change.
Okay.
But you'll see from their application that they have interest in about a dozen or two licenses.
Mhm.
So that may well justify a CFO.
Okay. Any questions from the board? We do see the application of amendment in the packet. So yes. Ms.
I
Escobedo.
just have a minor technical question, and I'm sure it's in order, but we don't have visibility on it. And that is your certificate of good standing from, regarding tax compliance. The date of that letter has been blocked out. Do you happen to know it, or?
If not, I know we did receive updated ones dated in September. Let me just check my file if you don't mind. I can certainly update those as well. I believe the ones we submitted, I think, are July or August, but I certainly can provide the board with updated ones we have issued at the end of September, if the board would like that.
Okay, our administrative assistant says she thinks that you might have supplied one with September 30th.
Okay, then I did update those. Yes. Okay, that's what my record shows as well.
She's
She's pulling it up right now.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions while we're waiting for that?
So the good news is that the letter from the Department of Labor and Workforce Development was September. So it could well be that this other letter is September. She's still checking.
You're looking for the Department of Revenue certificate?
The tax compliance certificate.
So the one, it's dated July 19th,
Oh, July 19th.
and then the DUA is September 30th.
Okay. So the tax compliance is July 19th, did you say?
July 19th.
Yeah. So is that,
I actually have one in my file as well. I think we did receive, I have one dated September 7th, so I can certainly send that along if that would make things easier. I do know they usually have a 90-day expiration date or so. So we did anticipate that, and I do have one as well dated September 7th. So I will make sure the board receives that by email either tonight or tomorrow morning, if that's fine.
okay. I
Thank-
think with
thank you.
that, we're okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Then could I have a motion, please?
Okay, move to approve the liquor license amendment application for a change of officers for Colwyn Management DBA Residence Inn by Marriott at 320 Baker Avenue.
Second,
Any further discussion? Then all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. So now we have our Department of Planning and Land Management update, and I see Ms. Rasmussen is here. So please, the director.
Good evening.
Or you want to wait?
We'll do that, yeah, after the
Okay.
the update. Yeah.
Well, I'm not alone to provide an update. I have with me 4 of my 5 division managers. Department of Planning and Land Management has, over the years, had a consistent mission, and I think it speaks to all 5 of our divisions. We have a new one, so there are now 5. But it's to honor and sustain our natural world, patiently and fairly guide land use decisions, listen and learn from each individual, with respect for their dreams, their goals, and their ideas, and can continuously strive toward excellence in service and education to the town. So we have our 5 distinct divisions, and that's planning, building inspections, health, natural resources, and economic vitality and tourism. The first of those 5 divisions is based on legislative and state agencies, and so they are regulated and enforce the regulations of those agencies. And these groups respond daily to residents, developers, real estate agents, business owners, and the like, who have questions about what can we do with our property? Okay. What's that development going on down the road? How do I get a permit? Do I need a permit? What if I have a complaint? What do I need to know about my building or my property? Where's my septic system? The great thing is that much of this information is available at 141 Keyes Road, and our staff work hard to provide complete information to these people that drop in at any time of day between 8 and 4. So we have had a lot of challenges over the past couple of years. First is our staffing. We've had 4 retirements and 5 people have left for other reasons, personal reasons, which means we have 9 new staff out of a group of 18 in the building at 141 Keyes Road. And they're learning quickly, but they don't have the history that we all do, that I have after being here for almost 36 years. So another challenge is the fact that development and construction did not stop during COVID. If anything, it increased because people were home and they finally had the time and the resources to look at their homes, look at their properties and say, oh, what if I did this? So this translates into work for all of the town departments because construction means more work for the assessor's office, means more work for the fire department, and so on. And then we are getting more complex. Zoning is becoming a little more challenging, as we've seen with some of the new initiatives that are being promoted. The building code is changing and being updated. The role of public health has expanded greatly as a result of COVID. Climate change is impacting our natural resources in ways that we did not anticipate. And our visitation numbers are increasing dramatically in anticipation of 2025. So with that, I'd like to introduce our 5 divisions, starting with the Health Division. Melanie Deneen is one of our newest division managers. And she's going to provide, each division manager will provide some of the highlights of what they are working on or what's going on in their division.
I think that's available too, I think.
Good evening. How are you?
All right.
I have been here 6 months. In that 6 months, we have been adapting to our new normal, what COVID looks like for the health division, for our community. COVID affected all of us greatly, different levels depending on where we were. As a health division, we discontinued in the last 6 months our day-to-day contact tracing of individuals. We've moved on into working on COVID in relation to monitoring through things like hospital admission rates and promote the use of Paxlovid and booster vaccines to help combat COVID. Our public health nursing continues to support COVID through contracting or working with the long-term care facilities, daycare facilities, doing vaccine outreach and promotion. In addition, the nursing services work on monitoring all the other diseases that people get, like flu or tick-borne illnesses. We have done this all largely through the support and contract through Emerson Home Care. About 2 weeks ago, Emerson Home Care gave us notice that they would like to terminate their contract effective November 4th. This left us a little bit of a scramble. We weren't prepared for that. We were working to fill that gap with individuals for a short-term solution to the end of FY23, utilizing people through our partnership with the Great Meadows Public Health Collaborative. We're going to be looking to hope to fill a nursing position for the town, a regular position, in FY24. In addition, we have had a staffing shortage. Marcia touched on a little bit. My division in particular had 2 retirements. We had some individuals had 30, together 60 years of collective public health experience. Filling that position this summer has been a challenge. I found it difficult to fill that position, to find people wanting to do the role of an environmental health inspector. I'm excited to say that somebody started today. Really happy about that, actually. This individual is very capable, but they are newer to this role and they need quite a bit of training. We have been utilizing contract engineering in the interim to support our work. I couldn't be 3 people at once, so we had some support with septic review and septic and design installation. And we're looking to continue to utilize this until we can complete the onboarding and training process of our new hire.
Any questions for the
Yeah, you have questions for
health
me?
department?
I would like, do we know why Emerson Healthcare terminated their arrangement with the town?
So the long-term employee, Tricia McGee, left. She gave notice and went on to other avenues of the work. And they told us they had no other nurse available to work.
So it's just they lost the staff to do the job.
That's what yes.
Okay. It sounds like that contract terms, though, didn't have a good,
We had a 60-day notice. We could have
60.
argued with them and pushed
Yeah.
back and said, you have to give us a nurse for the next 60 days.
yeah,
But we have somebody that's short-term covering, and we decided that it wasn't going to be the best interest of all of us to fight that battle.
I see. Okay. Just checking on that.
No, it's fine. No, it
2
was
weeks
a-
seems awfully short notice.
It was a 60-day at will, both directions.
Uh-huh.
That was the terms of the contract.
But
And we-
the total staffing that they were providing was just one person.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It was doing our disease monitoring, some work in the community, had done historically for the last 2 years, a lot of the COVID contact tracing.
So can you tell us a little bit about this new, you said it's called Great Meadows Collaborative. Can you just
Yeah.
tell us briefly?
I can. I don't want to take up too much time. So the state did a big survey a number of years ago. It came out with something called the Blueprint for Public Health, and saying this is what every community deserves to have, the fundamental principles of public health practice. And they said, you need to do this inspections, you need to make sure you deliver this for nursing. In order to fund that or help support every community, they did something called the Office of Local and Regional Health through the state, Public Health Excellence Grants. So we have a collaborative with Bedford,
Wayland.
Weston, Sudbury, Lincoln, Carlisle. And so we applied for a grant and we got a number of nurses, an inspector that we share. It came on board last July about. And so we're almost a year and a half into a 3-year cycle of that grant. So it's using the resources that we need, we share. So I get a little piece of a nursing position as part of that collaborative.
Right. Okay, great. But I don't understand how our little piece would be enough to fill in the slack for that
So
whole person.
It's not. What I'm proposing to the town manager is that we expand the hours and kind of scrounge up our money to pay someone extra to do that.
Okay.
Any other questions? So let's go to the next.
All right. Then I'm going to call on Natural Resources Director Delia Kay to give us some highlights on natural resources.
Good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. So with over 1,500 acres of land under conservation purview, I believe that the Natural Resources Division is the largest landowner in town, certainly from a town standpoint, with the smallest staff. Comprehensive stewardship of this land with over 37 miles of trails couldn't be accomplished without the help of excellent staff in our division, which is Land Manager Will Holden and Administrative Assistant Karen Bakoven. and dedicated volunteers on our committees and serving as land stewards. We're also fortunate to have 2 summer seasonals to assist with land stewardship, as well as 2 rangers to patrol town land for education and compliance with conservation land regulations. As Marcia touched on, we're currently down 1 employee. The Assistant Natural Resources Director position has been vacant since June. And as Melanie shared, I have also found it challenging to fill that position. I am hopeful to have somebody on by the end of the year. It won't be somebody with as much experience as I would prefer, but really we just need the right person, and all the stuff that we do in our office can be taught. Much of our time is spent administering and enforcing the Wetlands Protection Act and Concord Wetlands Bylaw. We continue to be busy with permits. Being a 3-river community, we are busier than surrounding towns based on DEP's issued file permits. Warner's Pond has proved to be a bit of a challenge. It's a project that I've been working on for several years, and as I think many of you are aware, we had secured $2.5 million in funding from borrowing and CPA monies to dredge a portion of the pond. Over the past year, working with the consultant, we secured federal, state, and local permits. This August, we went out to bid. We received 1 bid for $9.5 million, which, I mean, it's shocking. I think it's even higher than it really should be, but in any event, that was the 1 bid that we got. So we will be working with the consultant to model 2 alternative options, one being a modified dredging proposal rather than removing the sediment and dewatering it and then trucking it over to the prison land. Trucking costs were identified as a very high cost in the 1 bid that we received. We'll look to move sediment around in the pond, which would reduce the size of the pond. That's one option, and it's being modeled once we get under contract with the consultant, that will be modeled. And then the second option is to remove Warner's Pond Dam. And both of those are very different from where we had started. And what we would like to do is have the consultant model both of these options. We have costs, they're much lower than the dam removal is very conceptually estimated at 2.3, and moving sediment within the pond is estimated at closer to $3 million. So we're closer with the money that we already have appropriated. We would like to have a very robust community discussion and see how the town would like to proceed with this. It's not a decision that I feel we should be making it's really a community decision on how is the best way to move forward. Our plan is to have that discussion prior to April town meeting.
If I can just interject, 2012 is when the study of the Warner's Pond was done, and it's based on that study that we went forward with the dredging proposals. So this is kind of a setback because there had been wide community support for it at one point in time. So I think that's the reason why we want that robust community discussion.
And what format will you have that in? Will it be like a public forum or at a NRC meeting, or?
It'll be a public forum. I hope to do mailings out to the entire community, but now that we have the Concord Bridge, maybe there's a number of articles in the bridge so that we can save quite a bit of money rather than doing a mailing, but we haven't finalized that yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would the Natural Resources Commission host that forum? Who would host that forum?
So my office would host that forum.
Okay, so it'd be, because typically we have a town board or committee that, is, mapped to an event like that,
Right.
pursuing an initiative. I mean, in this case, the CPC is the one that funded, right, that raised the funds for the most part, not all, right? There were also capital, right, funds
Yep.
from town capital, but I'm just
So
trying to
the last
imagine
with
who
the-
would be the sponsoring organization other than the town
It would be the town.
department.
It would
Okay.
be the town. That's how we have handled it in the past. We have held 2 very robust community forums in the past.
Mhm.
One was once the watershed management plan was completed, or before it was finalized, we had a public forum on that. And then when we went to do the dredging feasibility study, we wanted to make sure that people were on board with what we were proposing.
Okay.
So
Well,
those,
A lot's happened since 2012, so
Right.
we'll see what the public thinks.
Right. And then White Pond has been a high point, and we remain cautiously optimistic about the APOD technology. Working with the Health Division, we implemented a cyanobacteria monitoring program over the summer, and had the APOD technology implemented at the ponds this year. This resulted in a season of very low cyanobacteria counts, and the consultants are both working on their end-of-season reports, and we hope to present to the board early next year on their results, so that we can have, again, sort of some broad feedback and input. Both Melanie and I have included funds in the FY24 budgets for testing and for one more year of these APOD technology.
It was a bit discouraging to get the letter about the rainbow trout, however. How about if we have a town-wide fishing tournament the day after they stock? I mean, I'm serious. Get them out of there. Yeah. Line up around the banks.
So I don't know whether there's,
I
mean, there are people who know a lot more about fishing than I do, and I don't know if there's a real preference for rainbows over, brookies or brown. There are other trout that are stocked in the pond, but why? Or if it's just a matter of what comes out of the fishery, out of the hatchery, they say, well, we have more rainbows this year, so that's what goes in.
Special love for invasive species.
The only fish that the state has for stocking is trout.
Right.
So if you want to get anything other than trout, you have to go to private hatcheries, which are in very short supply of any other species of fish.
But do they only have rainbow trout?
They have rainbows, browns, brookies, and there's a fourth one that I'm not recalling right now.
So
I think we
let's
should
get
get
those
some
others.
muskies.
And there's a lot of difference of opinion as to whether they're good or bad for the ecosystem.
Right. There is one theory that the rainbow trout eat the zooplankton eat the cyanobacteria. So if you put in the rainbow trout, then you are increasing the amount of cyanobacteria because there isn't something that is there to naturally predate upon it. So.
So any other questions for Natural Resources Director Delia Kay?
1,000, but
Delia, can you give us an update on Assabet River Bluff? Yeah, thank you.
That we're so excited about that project. We are very close to receiving the $500,000 from the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. And we will be hosting a charrette over the winter to talk about the All Persons Trail. And then next spring, we would like to have a large volunteer effort to do invasives removal on the property. And that would be a joint effort with the Land Trust and with Sudbury Valley trustees and the community.
How any progress on easements over to Pine Street?
In a word, no. I have reached out to a couple of the landowners, but have not been able to make any progress yet. I haven't given it a whole lot. That hasn't been.
Yeah, because it just seems like it'll increase pressure. I mean, there's an informal trail there now.
Yes.
Of course.
From Pine Street,
but
correct.
yeah, but I just want to avoid conflicts if we can.
Right.
It's similar cases. There's a CPC proposal for a trail, to renovate the trail that's in poor condition, that's out of Thorough Hills, that goes towards the Kennedy Pond. And, I actually walked that for the first time and found after I came back and looked at the GIS that I had been on private property most of my time. So again, in that case as well, I'm curious about pursuing easements or some other accommodations to avoid conflicts.
Right. And that's a conversation that I'd like to have with the neighborhood group.
But by the way, it's beautiful from that side of Kennedy Pond. I never realized that Kennedy Pond looks twice as big from that side. I don't know why it is, but yeah. Okay.
All right. And then we have Town Planner Elizabeth Hughes, who will provide us with highlights from the Planning Division.
Hello. So the planning division is 5 people, including myself. There's 2 administrative assistants and 2 senior planners. Ann Clifford is the senior planner that supports the Historical Commission, the Historic Districts Commission, the Community Preservation Committee. And she is she's been with the town a little less than 4 months now. And she has become a very invaluable resource for the community and the boards committees that she serves. In the short time, she has completed a grant application to the Community Preservation Committee and the State Historical Commission to update our historic resources master plan. So we're looking forward to that. She will work with the Historical Commission to put out a request for proposals to hire a professional consultant team to work with the community and the commission on updating that. She has also been very instrumental in providing detailed history and research for the Historical Commission for the Demolition Review Bylaw, which that bylaw was amended to now require demolition review for any structure that's 50 years or older. So every year, I mean, that aspect of the job has just increased significantly for her. And then she is also working with the Community Preservation Committee to update the Community Preservation Plan, as well as developing a brand new procedurals manual for the Community Preservation Committee to assist applicants, grantees, and the committee on the whole process. She has spent significant hours with the finance department developing a new spreadsheet that tracks all of the grants that have been awarded, their funding, the invoices, what's been paid, what is still outstanding, in a format that's consistent with the finance department. So they are now able to share information and keep up to date on all of the grants that have been awarded. She has also prepared the annual Community Preservation Committee report that's required to be submitted to the state every year. And her next on her list is updating all of the web pages for those committees that she serves. I should say that while Delia Natural Resources oversees the most land, the Planning Division oversees and assists 10 boards and committees. So our staff updates all of those web pages. We post their documents, minutes, agendas, materials, applications. So far this year, there have been 65 applications to the Historic Districts Commission, 31 applications to the Board of Appeals, and 8 applications to the Planning Board. And that's only those 3 boards and committees. Our other new staff person, you all know, is Erin Stevens. She is now the Senior Planner for Transportation and Mobility, and she's been in that job for 2 months. And she works with the Transportation Advisory Committee, works with Beth Williams and the Economic Vitality Committee on transportation, mobility, and sustainability issues. In these 2 months, she has started developing a proposal to do a town-wide comprehensive transportation study, and that is working with the town manager's office, DPLM, and Public Works. She has also been working with me to develop a proposal to hire a consultant to evaluate the minimum parking requirements in the zoning bylaw. This has been on the planning board's wish list for a couple of years, so we're moving that forward. And then she has also been instrumental in receiving a couple of grants. She was successful in receiving a shared streets grant, which they will be looking at the intersection of Main Street and Walden Street and the crosswalks and how to make that a little bit more pedestrian friendly. Let me see. And then for myself, I've been working with the planning board on developing the new scenic road bylaw, rules and regulations, working with the Historical Commission and the Public Works Commission, drafting new rules and regulations for site plan review. In the winter, we will be going out for a consultant to assist in updating the subdivision rules and regulations, which have not been updated since 2007. Will Holden is the land manager in natural resources. He has taken over the role as the reviewing agent under the tree preservation bylaw. Previously, we had an outside consultant helping for the first year and a half. And he has been working with myself and the two administrative assistants on different items in the tree preservation bylaw rules and regs to update those, as well as a couple ideas for the bylaw itself based on his work with people in the community and projects. And still working with the consultant on the Assabet River Bridge and Trail. Just working with the consultant and the glacial speed of going through the Mass DOT design process. And lastly, as I said, our two admin assistants basically keep the division running smoothly, just trying to stay ahead of everything we need to do with those 10 boards and committees.
Any questions for planning?
Yes, when you work with consultants, somebody needs to like make the policy decisions about what you want the consultants to accomplish. Do you have like any kind of written memoranda on the policy issues that you're asking the consultants to deal with?
Are you thinking of something like the townwide transportation study as an example?
Well, no, I mean, I assume there's something more specific, either when you put out the RFP or when you actually meet with the consultants and you say, here's what we want you to do, here's what we want you to accomplish. These are our policy goals. Are there documents like that like we could look at and see whether we might want to have any input into the policies that you're pursuing with the consultants?
So typically, the whole request for proposals outlines the purpose, what is the goal of the project, what it is that the policy that the town's trying to achieve, what the scope of work is, what the end product is, and what the deliverables are. So that's generally usually spelled out in the request for proposals.
Is that something that, are those something that we could see, at least the part that deals with, not the business part of it and, the what it's going to cost or how many hours, but the policy part, which says this is the job, this is what we want you to accomplish by rewriting the subdivision rules. Like, do we want to make it easier or harder? Do we want to have more, more paving, less paving? Do we want to,
So I think it depends on what the project is and what the policy is. The planning board under state statute is responsible for developing their rules and regulations for subdivision control. The planning board is one of the more active boards and committees as far as touching back on the Envision Concord Comprehensive Long Range Plan and the communities. The actual process for updating the subdivision rules and regs with that consultant will require substantial public outreach, not to only to citizens, but to developers and public works, engineering, highway and grounds, because ultimately those roads, many roads go forward to become public roads. And then ultimately it comes back to the planning board. They're required to hold a public hearing on that. So I think it depends on the project.
well, for instance, one of the things I'm thinking about is when we're rewriting subdivision rules and regulations, whether we're trying to create opportunities for or incentives for the building of affordable housing within the context of the regulations.
Then the subdivision rules and regs would not be a good example for that element, because that only deals with the laying out of roads and the actual construction design standards for the road and utilities, and it has no bearing on zoning or affordable housing. So again, I think it depends on the project and what the statutory requirement is for different rules and regulations, and community-wide input, whether it's through the long-range plan or public forums. But so again, that subdivision control, there's no element of affordable housing in subdivision control. So it only deals with construction standards for the laying out of a road and utilities.
To add affordable housing under subdivision control law would require a home rule petition to the legislature.
I mean, we did have a bylaw to reserve
struck down.
reserve land, and yeah, was considered problematic.
That's why I'm saying that
Yeah.
it would take a home
Yeah.
rule petition to and involvement of the state
I
legislature.
think what Henry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're trying to ask is, there are certain consultants that we hire, like, for example, the housing production plan. There's policies in there that, I think, Henry, what you're getting at is that we want the citizens and the boards to come up with these policies with the help of staff, and not to have the consultants come up with the policies. Is that what you're trying to ask, Henry?
I think that's a big part of it. I
And-
mean, the
and-
point is that consultants are only useful if there is a clear description of what you want them to accomplish. And that's true of dealing with any professionals. And it's frequently lacking in the sense that people will just say, well, let's just turn it over to the lawyers, or just turn it over to the engineers. And you don't necessarily get good results when you turn loose professionals and you don't give them the necessary guidance.
That's why we frequently have steering committees, or we work with specific boards and committees. And I think in the case of the subdivision rules and regulations, I know that they will be working with the planning board and with the Public Works Commission, as well as the town staff that are responsible for enforcing those regulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Any other questions?
not for planning.
Okay. And I don't see. Oh, good. Paul. All right. Paul Creedon is our new building commissioner. The staff in the building inspections division, with the exception of the administrative assistant, we have who's been here for 30 plus years, I think. Paul and Gary Smith have been here for 3 years, and everyone else is new this year. So we have 3 full-time inspectors, and then our plumbing and gas and electrical inspectors are brand new, as well as the backup inspectors for those part-time positions. So Paul, I'm hoping that you will give us some highlights of the building inspections division.
Hi, my name is Paul Creedon, as Marcia said. I've been building commissioner since August of this year. And the building department is responsible for reviewing applications for building code and zoning, and issuing permits. Obviously, we also, I'm also the zoning enforcement officer in town, so I'm responsible for zoning enforcement. We also do annual inspections of the schools, clubs, restaurants, etc. And
And the clubs, that you do that with the
club,
fire
yeah,
department.
the restaurants and clubs, we do with the fire department for their liquor licenses. That's actually just started around this time every year we start those. Permitting has increased over the last couple of years, particularly over COVID. Permits and revenue have increased 9% and 7% from fiscal 22 over fiscal 21. And we expect that to continue. We're already on track the first quarter of fiscal 23 to meet or surpass those amounts.
A profit center in the town.
Yeah.
That's not allowed.
Not allowed.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually, does it, and I'm not sure if you would know this or the question for Carrie, but do the fees keep pace with the costs? Or,
Department?
yeah,
Yeah, more than twice, actually. We generate more than twice our budget.
okay.
And in fact, fiscal 22, we brought in $1.3 million.
Amazing.
So, yeah, and we're on pace to do something similar to that for this fiscal year, this coming fiscal year. We also deal with, obviously, customers at the counter and over the phone and email. We get dozens and dozens of calls every day looking for, information, public info requests from realtors, residents, attorneys, etc. So we have to get them the information as they require it. I guess.
And then the building inspections division at the beginning of COVID had just begun e-permitting, so that
Yes.
they've gone to an e-permitting and are trying to get they received the plans online, so that we're now we're looking at how do you convert all of our paper documents to electronic in the future, and that's going to be a longer term project, nothing that we're going to be taking on anytime soon, but there are vast paper records at 141 Kais and at 37 Knox Trail. And Paul and his team will pull those drawings whenever they're necessary for people to look through, but we don't have them all in one space now, so that's not quite as convenient as it once was.
Yeah, and I have to say that I recently applied for, received a permit, got an inspection and closed the permit for a small project at my house, and it was a very smooth process. So really like the permitting system.
Yeah, it's working out well. Has some challenges, but for the most part, it's working out well. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's it. Do you guys have any questions?
So are you able to keep up with the high demand, or are you?
It's tough, it's challenging.
Yeah.
In fact, we're looking to hire, or hopefully we can hire another full-time ad person going forward. And we're looking to increase the electrical inspector's hours from 20 to 30 hours and make them a full-time benefited employee.
Looks like you got the budget for it.
Nah, I know. and some. Yeah, it's the electrical inspections at 20 hours is now sustainable with the increase of solar, battery backup, like electric car chargers. The review process is becoming more cumbersome, and associated inspections. It's really not sustainable, and I'm concerned that we will lose more people if we don't increase the hours, particularly for the part-time inspectors. They're only paid when they come in; they're not benefited. To take a day off, they're not paid. So there's really no incentive for them to stay. And as you know, there's competition not only from other municipalities, but the private sector as well, where they could, command way higher salaries. So I think that's going to be a challenge going forward. I'm sure all the departments are going to be faced with that, but we could, with our revenue, we could certainly do something to alleviate that, I believe.
It's part of the reason why we lost our prior to electrical inspector and our plumbing and gas inspector.
Okay.
All right.
Well, when you mentioned a profit center, I assume that the building permit fees go into the general fund.
They
It's
do,
not
yeah.
a, it's not a
Unfortunately, yes.
revolving fund that
It's
you,
not a- yeah.
that you can spend as you see
No,
fit.
I was joking, I'd say, but
We'd all have drive around Cadillacs.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thanks.
And then finally, Economic Vitality and Tourism Manager Beth Williams, who is responsible for the Visitor Center and Economic Vitality and Tourism in the community. This is a 1 year with the Department of Planning and Land Management, so we're delighted to have Beth on board. It's been invaluable to share the resource and to get to learn more about what the business community needs, as they tell Beth more about than they tell us, but also to share with Beth some of the challenges and some of the requirements for why we do what we do. And so I think it's been a great learning experience, and I'm delighted that Beth is on our team.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here tonight. So as Marcia said, I've been here just about 3 years now, originally under the Department of Recreation. So
You gotta make sure you're talking into it.
not a big fan of microphones. So I was under the Department of Recreation, and then recently, about a year ago, came under the Department of Planning and Land Management. I say I wear multiple different hats in that day to day, I oversee the operation of the visitor center itself. I have 17 limited status employees, about half are tour guides and half are desk staff. And they are the best, most loving people that love this town and its history more than anybody I've ever met. They will do anything for anybody at any time. They today scrambled, we got a last minute call for a private tour at 8 o'clock this morning, and they're still out having dinner now. They've had a fantastic experience. It was a corporate event that just decided to add a historic tour on at the end of the day. So we quickly scrambled and have a tour guide out with them, and then they're having dinner at Fiorella's. So they are an amazing bunch of people, and I'm really thrilled to sort of oversee that. So our day-to-day operation is officially April 1st through the end of December. We go to weekends only in December. But we are really a year-round operation, and that now that with the completion of the second floor of the visitor center, I am there year-round. And so during the winter, when the staff in January are not working, there's a doorbell, and I tend to work downstairs during that time. So I'm here for visitors, because as we know, visitors now travel year-round. Tourism is up, is the fantastic news. I can tell you that our fiscal year revenue from 21 was about 30,000 and about 40,000 from last year. And I expect that it'll be that or more at the conclusion of this fiscal year. Visitation for the month of October is probably close to double what we've had any prior year. You probably are very aware of the lack of parking and the buses. And it's just been really nice to see this resurgence of people wanting to travel, and the trolley has been a tremendous asset for us to be able to share more of Concord with people, with people who are able to see more. They're able to hop on, go somewhere, it saves them having to walk, they leave their car once, they're not, they're spreading out a little bit more, and they're getting to different Concord centers and really enjoying their time with us. So we cater to a bunch of different markets. So I like to say we cater to the residents in that when Aunt Sally comes to visit for Thanksgiving and you need something to do with her, she can take a tour with us. We take educational tour buses. We take leisure tour buses. So we have a contract with Colette Tours coming next year. That's a brand new company for us, bringing 20 buses from June through October. So I already have buses booked from January all the way through October for next year. The educational buses come in the spring, the leisure tours and the leaf peepers come in the fall. Everybody comes all year round. We meet on a monthly basis with our tourism partners, and they really have shared with us that the hotel Colonial Inn is booked, the Residence Inn is booked, the restaurants have been hopping. The feedback from the different business sectors has been really positive. One new thing that we've done sort of since COVID is add additional tours. It gave us an opportunity to really look at what we offer. When I got here 3 years ago, there was a historical walking tour that ran daily, and then the bus tour. And we now run a series of 7 different specialty tours. And then we have created some really unique partnerships. We did a Concord art tour celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Concord art. And we stopped at Albright Art and Lucy Lacoste Gallery and Three Stones, and ended at Barrow Bookstore, and really celebrated the women of art, both ones that were here years ago and the women in art that are currently running businesses and producing art here in this community. We started a fantastic West Concord tour with the creation of the Sign Museum and Billy Crosby and John Boynton's collaboration there. We now are running that West Concord tour on a regular basis. It's available as a private tour, and then during all the West Concord celebrations. That tour includes stopping at Deborah's and at Barefoot Books, which is now in the Bradford Mills. So it's been really exciting to see the different things that we can do. Our newest program is called Between Us Sisters. It is our show on the road, developed during COVID by two of my staff that wrote a performance portraying both May and Louisa May Alcott, and they are written based on their primary source material from their diaries, and especially with the correspondence between the two sisters while May lived in Paris. And it's about a 1-hour performance, and they've done it at the Concord Library. They've done it at Concord Park. They have booked Cary Library, they just did last week, and they have 4 more bookings over the winter and spring. And it was a way for us to bring the Concord history out into the community for people that couldn't travel, might have low mobility issues and aren't able to do a full walking tour. It's our way of bringing a little piece of Concord history out. And we're finding that there's a ton of need for that. People want to get outside. You know, our numbers didn't dip during COVID. They dipped a little bit because people just couldn't get here. But the amount of people outdoors wanting tours, pods, and what I like about my staff is that they're flexible, they're creative, they pivot, and they really work as a team to create these different opportunities for partnering with the business community and offering as much as we can.
Okay. Yes, Linda.
Well, a lot of activity there, and I'm sure the business district is enjoying all of this. A couple quick questions, and that is, you mentioned the Two Sisters tour, you know, being booked at 4 other locations. Is that on a marketing basis to the benefit of Concord, or are they being paid for those tours? I'm just trying to get some sense of it.
So they're paid for by my division for their time, and then we actually partnered with the Concord Players for the costumes, and then each of the venues pays us in return. So we cover the costs of their travel and their time, and then we make a little bit. It's just like a regular private tour. We just charge a little bit so that we're covering our costs.
Okay, I was just trying to see if it was a marketing tool that you were also using, but yeah.
It does make a little money.
Sure. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, good. And then the second thing is there any pattern to the peak time when buses come and go? So are you seeing more at the end of the day, at the middle of the day? How is that working?
If I had $1 million, there is no pattern. I mean, what I can tell you is there are times of year that different groups travel. So the educational tour groups come January through May, and the leisure travel tends to focus between September and November. So in terms of the big bus groups, that is when those types of buses come. There are less of the regular travelers now. So some of the lines like Gray Line and Yankee that you may recognize because those buses are pretty identifiable, they're on less of a pattern now than they were. But it is gearing back up to become a regular schedule. But what we're trying to do is get those buses to come at lunchtime. So right now we have Yankee that comes at lunchtime, which is perfect. We have the 2 bus parking spots in Concord Center. They stop, let their passengers off, and that they give them usually an hour and a half. And they've been able to give us those dates ahead of time. So then I can go out to the business community and the restaurants and make sure that they're open, they're ready, that we split people up so that we're not facing those crowds. So a lot of it is just education. Some of the buses don't let us know they're coming. We've had a few surprises lately.
But Beth is really good about getting out there, introducing herself, making sure that they have her contact information. So in the future, we're trying to build those bridges.
Thank you.
Terry?
Yeah, well,
It sounds
that's
like pivot is the name of the game.
Never a dull moment.
Yeah, appreciate your creativity and flexibility. It's great. So lots of buses. Where are they parking?
So the 2 drop zones are right here in Monument Square. There's one in front of the Right Tavern where the Concord Museum was using for many years when the museum was under construction, and the other is right here in front of Monument Hall. So they're both at curb cut, so they're easy for ADA accessibility. The buses can then park long-term along the shoulder along the old road where the school buses queue up in the morning. And then we can take a smaller coach bus in the back of Kai's Road. So there still are those bus parkings there. An oversized coach can't fit there because with the delivery trucks and the parking, it's just too narrow. But we can take smaller buses there.
So I thought I read that there was one time when all of a sudden 4 buses showed up. Where do 4 buses park?
So that was last Thursday, and it was indeed 4 oversized coach buses. One driver called ahead. He wins the gold star. I called and gave him a accommodation. So what we did, I got 2 of my staff to stand out on the corner of Monument Square and flag down the white buses. They told me what they looked like. So they got 2 of them into the bus parking spots. And because they arrived at 5:30, almost 6 o'clock, Main Street was relatively quiet. So we were able to get one in front of Middlesex Bank, and one actually got behind the visitor center as well. So it was a divide and conquer. Very grateful that I got hold of Concord PD right away as soon as I knew they were coming, because I knew we would need some reinforcements. 4 buses all at once is a challenge for our little town. But we did it. The group had a fantastic time. They ate everywhere, which was really fantastic. They spread out and yeah, pivot. Quick, call everybody, every tour guide I have.
So, I mean, this party's only just getting started here. I mean, over the next few years, we expect even greater growth. Are there plans afoot? What's happening as this demand
We
continues
have
to
grants
increase?
and requests in, being part of the coming years. So we are hopeful that we can identify a grant source for continuation of the trolley service. And where Beth is involved, at least attending meetings of the Rev 250. So she is aware of what's going on and beginning those conversations. And we're going to continue to be prepared as much as we can for what's coming in
Okay,
2025.
great. And actually, on that note,
That's right.
Terry has something she would like to bring up relative to the trolley. So while we got you here.
Right. This is a quick question. We had on our consent calendar a letter of support. And I'm trying to figure out if that's a letter of support for a transit bond bill or for the Concord trolley.
I think it's for the transportation bond bill. That is going through.
Yeah, because when we looked at the content of the letter, it says, support the trolley.
Right. The agenda says it one way and the letter says it the other way. So maybe there's 2 separate letters even? I don't know.
So I'm not sure. I read the support letter and I read it as after this citizen rode the trolley and was supportive of the trolley. And
No, that's
No,
a separate
that's a
letter from
different letter.
today.
this one.
This is the to whom it may concern. We're committed to provide the best service for both residents and visitors
So
to the area.
this is I believe this is for the transportation bond bill. So the transportation bond bill that was recently passed did include, I think, I believe it's $1 million to fund a 3-town trolley, Lexington, Concord, Lincoln, along with the national park. The issue with the transportation bond bill is that the funds get put into the bond bill, but they don't get appropriated. They sit there until the legislature does something. The legislature has, I believe, 5 years in which to allocate those funds. And if a community does not actively push to get the legislature to basically appropriate the funds and release them to an entity, or then they sit there. They just sit in the bond bill. And there have been funds that have expired in other transportation bond bills. So Aaron Stevens has started the campaign, working with different groups and the museums and different nonprofit groups and other entities and the Concord Business Partnership, the Chamber, to start that letter campaign writing to get the money released from the bond bill.
Okay, because at the end of the second paragraph, it does say requesting funds is approved in August from the 2022 transportation bond bill for a regional shuttle program. So that's at the end of paragraph 2, but then it goes 4 more paragraphs. And at the end, it talks about support for this project. So it was, I guess, it was not 100% clear.
Right.
What this was
Right.
supporting.
Thank you for
So I think-
clarifying it. Yeah, and,
Linda, do you have something?
Yeah,
oh,
and we're talking about the state funds or the federal funds?
The transportation bond bill are state, if it's a state transportation bond bill.
So the national park is going after the state funds.
No, the national park is a partner in this project. The three communities, we have also submitted a grant to the federal land. And we were hopeful to hear something by the end of October. We have heard they've reviewed the applications, but they won't be making an announcement for the FLAP grant until the end of the year, sometime in December. So that's separate. That's different than the transportation bond bill. We, Aaron, we all worked and went forward, two sources of funding, not knowing, which one you're going to get. So the funds for shuttle with these communities and the national park was put into the transportation bond bill, which was successful. We now need to work on getting it out of the bond bill, and we have not heard back on the FLAP grant yet.
Terry, is that?
okay, well,
So do we have a motion?
so just to clarify, so it's possible we could get both sources of money or only one?
Who knows? We don't know.
We don't know, but it's
Right.
possible. And,
I
okay.
mean, when you apply to a college, you usually go for
Yeah, yeah.
4 or 5 different
Right, right.
colleges. And when you finally get what
Right, right.
you want, then you decide which one you're going to take.
Right. There's been a few other
If we get them
times.
both, then we'll have to make our decision,
Right,
right?
right,
Well,
but,
but you can only go to one college, but you
Right,
can
right.
take money from many sources.
right,
I don't think there is anything precluding
right.
the communities and the national parks from utilizing both sources of funding.
Right, recently we had some other projects where it was one grant or the other. I think Aspet Bluff maybe, or I don't remember, but we could either do grant A or grant B, but we couldn't do both. But this isn't that type of situation.
Correct. These are two
Okay.
different.
I would just
programs.
ask that the letter be like a little bit clarified, maybe the last paragraph even, just saying again, because I think we're very much in support. I think we support, well, I support this and the FLAP grant, but I didn't even know which it was. So just to make sure that it's
Well, I
clear.
mean, I was just curious though, is there a time critical aspect to this letter? Okay.
No.
So then perhaps we don't vote it tonight, but we just request that edit and then,
Sure.
okay, that'd be great.
And we can also look to see, it may be, addressing this to our legislators or
Right,
whoever the proponent
Yeah.
originally.
Right,
That would be
Instead of
great.
to
Instead
whom
of
it may
whom we
concern.
I think it might
That's
be
right.
more.
Put it in there.
yeah.
So yeah, we can definitely work
because
on that.
obviously Senator Barrett has been really helpful, so, we can
Yeah.
put his name on it and thank him, whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
So I think that concludes the planning
Well,
update,
that's,
right?
for the most part, yes. I just want the board to know that I have delayed my retirement date to May 31st of 2023. So part of that is due to the Bruce Ruin Rail Trail not being completed until next spring. The portion in Concord is done, but portions of the trail in Acton remain to be done. And with the asphalt plants closing just prior to Thanksgiving, it's unlikely that that will be completed. They also have fencing and landscaping that needs to be done. Additionally, there's the housing production plan that we hope to have completed by January. And the housing production plan, and then Wheeler Harrington House, there's some discussion going on. We're planning a charrette for the early spring. And cultural districts, we need to identify who is going to take over as coordinator for those, both the Concord Center and West Concord Junction cultural districts. 'cause
And you've been doing that
I've been
personally?
doing all that.
Yeah. Okay. So then that takes us to our next agenda item, which also, I think,
Can I just say one
yes.
thing?
Sure.
I think we're all acutely aware of the incredible load that your department has carried, and each of you in all of your efforts. And just want to acknowledge that as someone who's liaison to many of the groups that you deal with. I know how many nights and all the pressure and just the volume that's coming out of your department. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we now have speaking of cultural districts, we have signage that's being proposed for the West Concord Junction Cultural District, and so perhaps we do a quick review of that.
These signs were developed by the Mass Cultural Council and have been, so they're the generic sign. We were trying to come up with something that was a little more specific, and we'll continue to work on that. But we received 4 signs from the Mass Cultural Council, and there is a strong urge on the part of the West Concord Advisory Committee and the West Concord Junction Cultural District Committee to see if we can get them located in West Concord. Next slide. So we have 4 locations, and I thank Terry Ackerman for correcting me on the second one, but southbound on Commonwealth Ave at Kenneth Dunn Square is the first one. Eastbound, not westbound, on Lawsbrook Road would be the second. Eastbound on Main Street, which is also Route 62 at Pine Street and Church Street intersection, and westbound on Main Street near the Assabet River Bridge. Next slide, please. This is
We need one on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
Well, we were thinking we would probably have separate signage for the Bruce
Okay.
Freeman. So it was difficult, and they would be smaller signs, but as you approach West
Yeah.
Concord along the trail, and we're going to see what we can do about getting those. But we don't have
Complete
those signs
streets.
yet.
Yeah.
So these are the 4 locations. Next slide. And we provide pictures with sort of a mock-up of that, where that sign would be located. Next slide. And then this is eastbound. This is utilizing the existing sign at the corner of Pine and Main Streets. Next slide. And this is just before the bridge over the Assabet River in West Concord, just before the West Concord Shopping Plaza. So we're seeking your authorization, permission, approval of these 4 locations, and Public Works is ready to get the signs installed, hopefully before the end of the year, and possibly by the time of the holiday stroll that's planned over in West Concord in December.
Questions from the board?
Just comment, I know this has been a long time coming. You guys have been working on this for a couple years, I think. So it's really great to see this happening.
Well, I actually have a question, which is, what about wayfinding signs?
Mm.
I mean, is that still in the offing, or is it separate from this?
It is probably in the offing, and it is separate from this. Wayfinding would probably go back to the West Concord Junction Cultural District and the West Concord Advisory Committee to come up with what that
I
would
thought
look
there were
like.
like made-up signs just waiting to go. It was 6 years ago. I was a member of a task force, I think, on this.
Correct. Getting consensus over a design was the challenge, and I can tell you unequivocally there is no consensus for Concord Center, and there's some consensus, but there was a consensus at the time, but committees that have looked at it since then have rejected those
Wow.
that branding that was done.
Do these signs represent a consensus of anything?
No, these were what the Mass Cultural Council
They just
gave
provided
us.
them.
But
gave
Maybe we
us.
should ask them to
They-
just provide us with
They had,
wayfinding
they had
signs.
4 different signs you could choose from. This is the suburban sign that they had available. They also had an urban sign and a rural sign and another generic one that,
So it has nothing to
This
do
was-
with West Concord.
well, this was the one that the West Concord Junction Cultural District felt was most representative
It
of
had
the
a
4
clock
that they had
tower
to
on
choose
it.
from.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
And a tree.
a storefront or something like
Tree.
that.
It has a
Yeah.
tree.
Well,
and,
Yeah.
I was the liaison and I sat through several meetings where the West Concord Junction Cultural Council debated whether to have the clock tower, whether to have it this way, that way. They picked a design, and then a few months later, someone had resigned and a new person came in and they started over again. It was a very difficult process. So it's really I'm glad to see we're going to have some signs at this point.
At least to identify our cultural district.
Yeah.
We do have 2 wayfinding signs going in on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. That was part of a grant that Acton was received, but they extended and allowed Concord to participate. So we'll have one at Giroux Park that will indicate where Giroux Park and restrooms, as well as where West Concord Center and the train station are located. And then there'll be one just over the Neshoba Brook Bridge on the south side of the bridge near Brookside Square, which will direct people to the post office, the train station, and retail food places.
That's very good. I mean, that's nice to hear that there'll be something there. Yeah, okay. Any other questions before we have a motion? I think we need a motion to approve these signs.
Sign locations.
Sign locations, yes, thank you.
Okay, move to approve the placement of the 4 signs in the West Concord area, Cultural District as shown in the packet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks very much, Marcia.
Thank you very much.
All right, so our next topic that I hope to cover quickly, and if I could share on the screen, that would be great, is the progress against our select board goals. Just here we go. Let's go ahead and share. There we go. In the packet is a printed summary, but this is a little more dynamic. I just wanted to briefly run down where we're at. So if you look at our first quarter's goals that ended in July, we're pretty much done. There are just a few things. Evaluating the recommendation of the Personnel Bylaw Study Task Force. We're scheduled to do that next time, to have the Personnel Board as well as town staff come in and further evaluate this. Second, the town volunteer database that is underway, but I think we're still just monitoring. And then third, the preparation for select board meetings and timely publication of minutes. And now with new staff, I think that we're well on the way there. It's just a matter of, I think, just continuing for a bit. Mm-hmm. So that's all great. Now, if we move to October, the quarter that we just ended, we wanted to ensure that our volunteer card process ensured that all volunteers are acknowledged for their willingness to serve. And I believe that we're doing that. I think, Terry, I wanted to check in with you whether you're satisfied at this point we're sending the right kinds of acknowledgements, because I think you raised this issue originally.
Okay, should I answer?
Yeah, sure.
The answer is I don't know. I know there's some software problems and limitations.
Well, it would be nice if maybe we could just follow up on that for next time.
I think possibly Carrie and Shannon might have an update on that. Last I looked, we still couldn't do anything except a kind of robotic type response.
Yeah, I don't have an update at this point, but Lori Austin and I are meeting weekly to discuss boards and committees. At this point, an update with the volunteer cards is that I'm no longer going to be accepting every single copy in our office. Lori is going to maintain the records in the town clerk's office rather than us filing them twice. But so I don't have an update on the response that people would get for submitting a volunteer card right now.
Is anybody in charge of looking at that response?
I think if anyone, it's the clerk's office.
Yeah, it sounds like we need to follow up.
Yeah, we need.
Yeah, I think the important thing is, as Shannon mentioned, they're meeting weekly. As you know from your last several agendas, they are finding lots of things that need updating. And so we're just working through the big pile of stuff as a result of COVID that didn't get done.
Right.
Okay.
Right, so that's helping that aspect. I don't think yet, Matt, that we've tackled this thing about the
Right, and
acknowledgement.
so I didn't have a status for it,
Yeah.
and so I think we do need to keep looking at that. The next one is about the town website organization and access. And I know that we had planned to kind of have a jam session on that where we would talk about things. And maybe what we should do is think about gathering, as board members, your impressions, and maybe we can pull them together and share with town staff and just see what is possible. Certainly, we are in part confined a little bit by the capabilities of the platform that we have licensed, but that said, I'm sure there's many opportunities to improve. And I know, again, that is something that's been in process since we've had some personnel changes. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic on that one, but we still have work to do.
So are you saying there's going to be an agenda item and discussion?
At a future meeting, but I would suggest in the meantime, though, offline, try to gather your inputs, because it's not the kind of thing where we're just going to open up the website and say, look at that.
No.
we really want to have an organized set of feedback.
Well,
Okay.
is this something that each of us as liaisons should be working with our committees to see and ask them to
To the
see?
extent that it's committee-oriented content, but the town website includes a lot of other content as well.
Right,
I
but,
mean, just for citizens that are trying to pay their bills to the town,
Right.
lots of things, find
Right.
out when the swap off drop off is and, all of that.
right, but I think with the committees, there's a number of things that are out of date.
Mhm.
Should we be asking the chairs to compile a list or
Or submit those things. Yeah.
submit them to who?
Yeah. Carrie, who would
And
you
the
suggest?
information that is available about different committees.
Making
is-
it consistent.
It's kind of haphazard as to what is included.
Right,
And some of the committees have their members,
right.
and there is.
Well, we should have a
I mean,
standard
they're
bill of
all-
material, I would say,
and-
for each committee.
One thing that we really need to work on is getting a consolidated volume of the charges of all the
Yeah.
committees. Still something that we don't have. There needs to be in one place where if you want to know what a committee is charged to do, it is possible to find out in a convenient way. And when we do that, we're going to find that a lot of those charges are seriously out of date. And so there is no direction for what we expect committees to be doing.
Yeah,
And even they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So they're making it up as they go along.
well, then when people want to apply, the first question is, what does this committee do? And I'd like to be able to have that linked up with the volunteer card page so that I could say, okay, here's the list of committees and what they do. So you know what? I think, Matt, we really do need to have a whole discussion about all of
But
this.
I assume it's going to happen sometime December, January.
Okay,
Okay?
That's a
Linda, did you have a
one-line
question?
item in here
Or-
that deserves a lot of attention and a lot of time.
And you noticed that I didn't put any status next to it because we have not done this item.
Well, I was just going to say, with the new communications director, I think that she would be critical to our conversation, and maybe could provide a sort of a framework that could then go out to the committees, so that they would fill in, some
yeah, great idea.
information that would be consistent from one to the other, and then where they need to be personalized, they could be, et cetera.
I could kick this off at the chair's breakfast next week.
Yeah,
So-
and then if we have that
We
information
have a
in
template or something.
in advance of our select board discussion, that would save a lot of time.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so then just to conclude for this quarter, clearly we're doing the capital planning process. That's still in process. I probably shouldn't have put that as an October 31st because it's not scheduled to be done by the end of October. Then the 250th, I think that I highlighted, we really should be receiving a report from the 250th committee. So I guess we're looking for that. It's still in process as a result. I mean, I think that the committee's off to a grand start at this point.
Well, if you,
But-
you get a pretty good report by looking at the Minuteman video of our meeting
That's
on
true, but
Thursday.
we still should get some summary, ideally. Okay, and
And
then,
actually, I'm trying, when you have a dozen subcommittees and you try to get each one of the chairs of each one of those subcommittees to write for you a concise statement of what they intend to do and when, and what they've accomplished, it's a worthwhile task, but it is a task.
well, the town manager does that with the weekly report. So,
Yeah, but we pay her to do that.
yeah, okay. All right, so then I just
So,
wanted to give a little advance.
Can I ask a
Look.
couple of questions on
Sure.
the October ones? Okay,
right.
so for Bruce Freeman, it says, accept Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee recommendations to improve coexistence of pedestrian cyclist users in Junction Park.
Yep.
So we did accept that.
Originally, it was in July and we
Right.
updated it to.
So we accepted these recommendations and now they're being implemented. I'm a little, is this Public Works and DPLM are implementing those items or?
Yeah, so I think that the committee part of that process that was in our goals done.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. And then my other question was, what else do we have for October 31st? I had another one here.
Well, notice that we also have 3 items that weren't on our original goals. Calling a special town meeting, deciding about funds for Christopher Heights that we weren't originally scheduled to have to decide, and amending the White Pond Advisory Committee charge. So those were all
Oh, that
things that
was it.
weren't originally anticipated, but had been added as goals for us.
Right,
Yeah.
that was it, the White Pond. So we've amended the charge. But this other stuff, have we done this? Recommend additional septic regulations and take other measures focusing on improving long-term health.
No, and so I could update that to in progress instead.
Yeah, I mean, some of these, we definitely have completed part of it,
Yeah, I can split it.
whichever, yeah.
All right. Then again, looking forward, I'm not going to just recite all of our goals again, but what I would like to do is just to highlight a couple of things that, again, are either priorities or have been added. So next time in December, we'll be meeting with the DI Commission in December to talk about joint initiatives. We will be talking, we've already started the process of looking at the residential exemption, and we will have the assessors back next time. We expect there to be a ruling from the court for Esterbrook Trail. So we don't know what items there will be there, but probably will be things to do. And then a transportation study, we just heard about that, maybe it's appropriate to set it as the April timeframe because it sounds like that's still being proposed. And then finally, the economic development director position hiring and this is really mostly town manager work, but we of course have an interest. So just highlighting those for this next quarter.
Could I just mention that that position is actually going to the Personnel Board on Wednesday?
Great.
So as a new position, it has to go to the Personnel Board to be accepted into the classification.
Excellent.
And then we would be advertising shortly thereafter.
Okay. And then finally, for the April quarter, we have this new one on approving the National Historic Plans, park plans for Old North Bridge Battleground Site. And I moved the townwide transportation study here and wireless communications. So basically the part that's in red, looking at safety and access concerns. I also realized there's one more that must not have gotten marked correctly, which is about, I added a new goal for us as a board to take a leadership role in the affordable housing activities
I
because.
saw that on here when I was
Right.
reading through, but now I can't find it.
And it seems
Bottom of
like,
the first page.
yeah, is it supposed to be?
Yeah.
Here it is, develop, number C08, develop
Okay.
a strategy.
Yeah, and so anyway, I think particularly in light of the Christopher Heights decision, here we go. Develop a strategy for increasing the number of affordable housing units. That really, it's, the select board needs to take a responsibility of taking a leadership role here. So I don't think there's debate on that.
Right.
Okay, so that's just a
But-
quick review of where we're at. We're doing okay relative to our goals, but clearly we need to stay on it, keep the pace up.
So a couple of questions, if that's all right.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think we're moving along really well. Under your leadership, it's going very well. So on this last one you were talking about, I think developing this strategy will probably take a while. It's going to take a lot of thought. And I don't think that you have in mind that we're going to wait till April 30th.
No,
but-
gosh, no.
Right. So
Got to get started right away.
right, that's, okay, so, all right, that's what I was gonna say, so, okay, and then, on DEI, number CO2, conduct diversity, equity, and inclusion training session for the select board. What do we think we're gonna be doing for training the select board?
Don't know yet.
We're going to talk with the DEI committee when they come in. Okay, all right. And my last question is GO2. We probably did this, but I don't remember. Work with state legislator representative on the senior means tested property tax.
That was approved.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
finished with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. It confused me because it says complete and it says ongoing.
Oh, well, it's complete.
Yeah, got
We
it,
we couldn't predict when, but it got done.
got it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for this discussion before we move on?
Looks good.
Okay. All right, so then that takes us to nominations and appointments.
Okay. We are going to nominate Amy Beamer of 383 Pope Road to the Concord Cultural Council for a term to expire April 30th, 2025. And Carl Liebig of 12 Deergrass Lane, Jen Keegan of 60 Highland Street, Beth Kelly of 39 White Avenue, and Jennifer Parker of 247 Lawsbrook Road to the White Pond Task Force for a term to expire following the completion of their final report to the Select Board.
Okay, thank you. And
So
now-
I
yes?
just have a question about that last one. Are we expecting that to happen, before the end of the year or first quarter next year, or do we have some time frame?
I think the charge gives
Yeah, it
a
does.
date, but I don't recall what it is. Mary,
Yeah.
Mary would
Yeah.
be able to answer that question.
Yeah, I thought it was 2024.
Not this fiscal year.
Yeah, it was, I think, town meeting in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, something like
It
that.
has a very specific time
Yeah.
deadline on it.
Okay, because I know part of the committee is no longer,
Right, no, the task force, so the committee activities are suspended.
correct?
Right, and so now the task force is being formed to take
Okay.
over this aspects of this charge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So could we say, anticipate it in 2024 or some time period, or fill in the blank depending on what the charge says?
Well, so this is just nominations, so we don't have to have explicit times, but what we will do, why don't we follow up so that we put explicit
Yeah, because
dates on the
next
on the
meeting,
appointments.
we'll
We
make
need
the
them on the
appointment.
appointments, we need time
Right,
certain.
right.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
okay, good catch.
Okay.
So appointments.
Move to appoint Catherine Ryan of 109 Stone Root Lane to the Personnel Board for a term to expire May 31st, 2025. and move to appoint Peter Lowett of 5 Westvale Drive for a term to expire April 30th, 2025, to the Concord Housing Development Corporation, and correct the appointment for Lee Smith of 1836 Main Street to the Concord Housing Development Corporation for a term of May 31st, 2020 through May 31st, 2023.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now to liaison reports. Anybody want to go first? Going once?
All right, I will.
All right.
So I attended the 2025 forum the other night in the library, and I'll let Henry speak to it, but we had a great crowd, really good job, 100 people or more altogether. The PEG Access Group is, as you know, working on the 10-year contract that with Comcast that expires, the current contract expires in 2024. And what I didn't know is that Comcast will earn $63 million just on cable over the 10 years, if their price doesn't even go up from what it is now. It's over 200 million if you include the phone, cable, and internet. So this is a very big contract, and the select board should really be paying attention. And we have scheduled, I think it's in February, when the consultant will be coming in and giving a brief overview on how we're going to negotiate with Comcast.
When you say earned, do you mean net, or do you mean the revenues will be 200 million?
I think it's the revenues, but that is a question when the consultant comes in. But in any case, it's a very
believe
large
it's revenues.
contract. It's a very, very large contract. Okay, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Safety Committee met, as you know, with the other 7 towns that are involved in the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. And my understanding is they presented these uniform safety rules to our Concord Bruce Freeman Rail Trail group, who endorsed them. And next it will come to the select board for an endorsement.
Which we will take up next meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. And finally, the 2229 committee, I have been in the process of writing a charge for this new task force that we agreed would be a good idea. But we are slowing down that process now and putting it on pause due to a medical leave of absence. And we will be continuing in the spring.
Okay. Anyone else for liaison reports? I can just say myself that it was all about the middle school last week, or the week before last, I should say. The middle school building committee, I attended a meeting where I think, as I've already reported, the committee was able to do value management to the tune of another $350,000 approximately, and also had reaffirmed, by not taking a vote, their desire for $115 million amount on the town warrant, which, as we all now know, that a majority of the board changed to 110 million in when approving the warrant. And there was also a lengthy discussion at the Finance Committee about the same topics, the budget for the middle school. And then I went to the DI Commission meeting where there was a very long and I think very fruitful discussion with the police chief, Joseph O'Connor, and the policies and procedures of the Concord Police, which seem very sound from a DI perspective, I think. Okay, Linda, did you want to?
Sure. I'm going to do this a little differently than I usually do. I attended a session of the Concord Municipal Housing Trust, the Community Preservation Committee, the League of Women Voters, DEI, hearing on land use and zoning for affordable housing, and the League of Women Voters First Friday session, which was also on affordable housing. And I would say that the theme across all of these was looking forward to the housing production plan and the new objectives that will be set there for affordable housing, how that coordinates with the select board's own objectives for reaching affordable housing goals. And I think, so that was one clear theme across all of those. The other theme for at least most of these, I failed to mention the Concord Housing Authority in addition. The other theme was preparation for the special town meeting warrant. And with the annual town meeting warrant coming up very soon, also anticipating that. And each of the committees was looking at that from their point of view. And I think I'll leave it at that in terms of well-attended, large groups of people, particularly at the League of Women Voters First Friday on affordable housing. Terry was there as well. And at the League of Women Voters session on DEI, high interest group. Both of those two that I just mentioned were Marcia Rasmussen attended, as well as Liz Russ was at least at one of them, if not both of them. And we're talking about sort of the current state of affairs as well as looking forward to where we go from here. And then I also attended the Mass Municipal Association on Conflict Management. Over 400 people signed up for the seminar itself. They said one of the highest that they've had. I think we're very fortunate in Concord in terms of, sort of the ground rules and the way in which our town moderator, as well as our chairs, skillfully handles setting the tone for how we're going to deal with civil debate. And we're very fortunate to compared to what's going on in some communities at this point. I strongly encourage, as well, as much as you think you know about this and how well you may feel about how we handle our process here, I think it's still worthwhile for everyone to tune into the recording of this session. I think it'll be very instructive.
Okay, thanks, Linda.
Yep.
Henry?
I guess it's my turn now.
That's right.
The 250th committee had a public forum at the library in the Goodwin Forum on Thursday, and a lot of people contributed to making that a success. Emily Smith, the librarian, Di Clymer, a member of the Board of Trustees of the library, who's also a member of our executive committee, Mark Pauley, the video and media guy, and a group of people from the League of Women Voters who helped with the technical arrangements, because we were able to hold this as a hybrid meeting. But we, in spite of the meeting being a hybrid meeting, we had 70 people there physically in attendance, and I'm told we had 25 people online, although I was only aware that one or two of the people who were participating online actually spoke or made any, but they were listening, and I think it was to my mind, it was a remarkable event, because it was a large crowd of very interested and concerned and enthusiastic people who expressed many ideas, and there was no controversy. Oh, I'm not kidding. There was no controversy. And everybody felt free to speak, and nobody stood up and said that anybody else was wrong. I mean, that was the spirit of the whole thing. And a lot of information was shared. We're going to do it again. It's one of those things, it's like when you go to a restaurant, you get a really great meal, and then you go back a month later, it's, it may not be the same, but we're going to do it again. And we're also, more and more people are being recruited and saying they want to join in this effort. And so we're at the point now of pulling it together and asking the chairs of the subcommittees to finalize their goals and objectives. I asked them all 2 or 3 months ago to tell me what they expected to accomplish, that is accomplish, not think about, by the end of the year. And I've gotten answers from more than half of them.
Sounds like your report.
It may be.
Sounds like the report.
And I think we're certainly at the cusp where we have to really convert the enthusiasm and the ideas into concrete action and results. And that is the hard part. And that's where I have to start cracking the whip.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Dane.
So the other activity I've been involved in is I've been working with the Public Ceremonies Committee to fill the vacancies that are on that committee. And because I see that not only as my liaison relationship, but also that committee I see as a very important component of what we're doing for the 250th. And one other thing I want to mention in that regard is, because I've seen very little publicity of it, we have a traditional Veterans Day ceremony. And that again has been it has been planned, and there is a protocol for it that has been put together by this Public Ceremonies Committee. But I want everyone to know that on Friday at 7:45, those people who are going to participate in that event should assemble at the Pritchard Gate to the cemetery, and they will step off at 8 o'clock in the morning. And if it is anything like what it was last year, it'll be a really great event, weather permitting. And all the members of the select board are invited to attend, and the chair is invited to make some remarks if he cares to.
Okay. I'll be there.
Good.
Okay. Let's see. Now we're moving to correspondence. Just want to acknowledge a piece of correspondence in our packet from Frank Feely, talking about special town meeting warrant articles. And now we're ready for public comment. So if you have a public comment, please step forward or raise your hand if you're on Zoom. Identify yourself and make your comment. Yeah, come on up. Okay.
Hi, I'm Richard Santoro, 625 Lowell Road in Concord. This is my first select board meeting, so thank you for having me. It's actually lovely to see all the wonderful work that the town is doing and the select board. So just really commend you all for the work that you're doing. The purpose for me showing up tonight, though, is to inquire about, a matter that's going on down in Hildreth Corner and litigation against the town relating to 615 Lowell Road, and a developer's appeal of an HDC verdict. As you know, there has been over 260 concerned members of this community who are deeply concerned about the proposed development in Hildreth Corner in the historic scenic area of Barrett's Farm Historic District. They were very fully in support of the HDC, multiple HDC rulings denying the builder's applications, and which were, those denials were all very appropriate. And I think we applauded that good work by the HDC. And there's concern now that the developer has now sued the town for appeal of that verdict. as I think you've probably received some correspondence from neighbors who are here and also members of the community, both virtual now and in person. We've urged the select board in the town to vigorously defend the HDC and the determination. And we're a bit surprised today to see a filing that was made at the at Superior Court in Massachusetts that the town has actually not filed an answer for the complaint for the appeal, and has entered into a stipulation with the developer and the plaintiff to extend the deadline for the answer for the appeal for the town in lieu of, I guess, some negotiations that might be going on between the town and the developer. And so we're here really to get some information. I know there's other members of, like I said, the community here who are concerned. We're looking to see, is the town going to vigorously defend the HDC and the appeal? And also want to get information if there is any discussions that are going on for some sort of settlement or resolution of this in lieu of, what we think is a very appropriate HDC determination. The other thing I'll add is, this isn't really just important for the historic district and Barrett's Farm Historic District in Hildreth Corner, which, neighbors and community are very concerned with in terms of inappropriate development there. But it's also really an affront, I think, to the HDC and the important work it does to preserve the scenic nature and the history of our town, which we all know is so special and what binds us as a community. And if we feel that if it's not vigorously defended, it could set a really bad precedent for, developers looking to leverage, our historic resources in an inappropriate manner, and to, basically show that the HDC does not have authority to manage and protect our historic districts. So we're just looking for some sort of response from the select board in terms of the town's position, discussions, and a little visibility on the subject. Thank you.
I don't know, Carrie, would you like to comment? Otherwise, I could make it just a very brief comment.
Well, I can just provide the update we received on Friday.
Sure.
Okay, so on Friday, we did hear from our attorney who provided an update to let us know about the stipulation, which you referenced. And the reason for the stipulation is because there are ongoing negotiations between the applicant and the town to provide a more suitable development for that property.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing to note is that, any revised design would have to go back to the HDC.
Right, that's correct.
So,
which is what would almost certainly happen even if the matter went through the whole judicial process.
It still would be
end
the
up
resolution
back
is to go
in front
back
of
to the
HDC
HDC.
again anyway.
Right. So that, I don't know if that helps, but it is, the formal process. The property is still in the historic district, so it still has to go before the Historic District Commission.
No, that is helpful, I think. I think there's just concern that there's not much visibility relating to these discussions among the community. And given the, I think the community support for what, that if the parcel is developed, that it is done in an appropriate manner, along with and inconsistent with the HCC's determinations that have already been previously done. I mean, we're concerned about, some sort of horse trading and lack of visibility that related to, what's been an important issue.
I think the HDC takes its charge very seriously. So
If once something is in a legal context and you want people to be able to negotiate in a creative way, it's extremely difficult to do that in public. And so you have to expect that once this is in a legal context and there are settlement discussions, the settlement discussions cannot succeed if they take place in public. And any result that is obtained will have to then go before the HDC to be, in a public meeting, to be adopted.
Okay. Understood. Thanks. Other public comment? Yep. Come on up, identify yourself, make a comment.
Louis Salami, 68 Great Meadows Road. As both a former regional school committee member for 6 years, where I was chair twice, and vice chair of the CCHS building project, I think it's fair to state that I'm a huge supporter of the schools. While I was on the regional school committee, I put students first in my decision-making process. However, when making decisions, I was mindful of the social contract that I viewed existed between families with students using the school system, which is 30% of residents, and those families who no longer had kids in the school system, which is 70%. Concord has a long history of supporting its school system and allocates a large percentage of its budget towards its schools. It is why many families are attracted to the town. Families with kids who graduated feel a moral obligation to support the schools. The same was done for them when their kids were using the school system. This support is there because residents who no longer use the school system believe that the schools are being managed in a fiscally responsible manner. I've been following the middle school project closely since it was formed and supported the initial decision to move forward. However, I view the rhetoric around the project's recent budget difficulties disturbing and divisive. I applaud the decision last week by the Select Board to increase the budget for the middle school project by $7 million to $110. While it was less than the $115 million that was requested by the building committee, it still represents a healthy increase. The Select Board is trying to balance the needs of the school with all residents of Concord. To suggest that the students of Concord are somehow being shortchanged by this decision defies credibility. It also violates the social contract that I previously described. The building committee needs to show residents in Concord that it's doing everything it can to manage the overall cost of the project. The middle school will cause the average household a yearly increase in their taxes of $1,400 versus the high school project of $450. A building with a $110 million total project will serve the students of Concord for years to come. Importantly, what is lost is that the Select Board set the budget to a level that should generate a favorable outcome at special town meeting in January. If it was set too high, the risk of failure increases. Failure would result in the budget being put back to the $102 million level and substantially higher cuts to the building. You have done the building committee and the students a favor by being pragmatic in your approach. My concern with the project is that the bids for the project are going to come in well above the new budget of $110 million. There is ample precedent for this. Recent bids for Somerset, Westwood, and Swampscott building projects all have received bids well in excess of the budget value approved at their respective town meetings. Each of these projects only received 3 bids. The construction market remains tight, and subs are only willing to take on new work that are rates that are well above the going rate. The building committee needs to undertake further VE today and build a cushion that will allow them to absorb higher bids, which will allow them to start construction in May per their schedule. Should they ignore what every school project in Massachusetts is experiencing and the bids come in above the new budget, they will face costly delays and higher redesign fees from the architect and the OPM. These costs could easily reach $5 million and force them to even take greater VE to pay for these higher costs. The time to take VE is today, not in April when it is too late. The Select Board is in an uncomfortable position of overseeing the project and wanting to avoid making decisions in day-to-day in terms of how it is being managed. I respectfully request that the Select Board have the building committee answer the following questions. After consulting with their architect and OPM, what is the likelihood that the bids will be above the construction project, and what will be the total cost should this occur? To me, this outcome is inevitable, and the building committee needs to tackle these issues head-on today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
Do we have a copy of that letter for the record?
We could request.
I'm sorry, I'm happy to get it. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm happy to send it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
And again, thank you for your.
Public comment, others, please identify yourself, your address, and make your comment.
My name is Toby Chaudhry. I live at 100 Kayas Road in Concord. I wasn't expecting to speak, but just to introduce myself, I've held some office in Concord. I was elected student government president of the Peabody Middle School. And I was also an election commissioner, a volunteer election commissioner at one point. And now I serve on Chair Henry Dane's Rev 250 committee, subcommittee, and very proud to be. But I just want to put a comment in as a shareholder in our community in the town of Concord and just say thank you. I think that there's something to be said about folks who volunteer their labor for less money than it takes to live on. And it's a great sacrifice that you make for the town of Concord, and it's a great gift of your capabilities that you bring. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thanks for your comment.
Thank you, and I have a question. I have a question for you. All those photos you were taking, what are they for?
It's I wanted to remember what I was seeing, because I thought a lot of very important issues were discussed here, and it was good to see the active participation of our community, people who live, work, and play here, in trying to figure out solutions for it.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Please come, state your name, address, and make your comment.
We are concerned neighbors that this developer has come back repeatedly, ignoring the comments of and instructions from the Historic District Commission. And just while I understand, Mr. Dane, your point about needing some space for negotiation, my concern would obviously be that then perhaps the Historic District Commission's hands are tied with whatever proposal then comes back. So I would again urge the select board to support the mandate of the Historic District Commission in protecting our town and our historic districts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment? Seeing none on the Zoom and none in the room, I think it's time to adjourn. So thanks very much, everyone, and see you next Monday.